What's 2FA security on Kraken? Let's say I'm captaining my soccer team, and we're up by a goal against, I don't know, Soda Springs FC. Do we relax? No way. Time to create an extra line of defense and protect that lead. That's like 2FA on Kraken, a surefire way to keep what you already have, safe and sound. Go to kraken.com and see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Interactive Inc., PWI DBA Kraken. View PWI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
This episode is brought to you by Merrill. Join one of the most iconic names in wealth management, Merrill. You'll be part of a dynamic team of advisors and specialists working hard every day to grow their clients' wealth. And with the support of best-in-class research, advanced digital tools, and the resources of a global institution, it's truly an opportunity you can be bullish about. Learn more at careers.bankofamerica.com. Copyright 2024, Bank of America Corporation.
Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast today. I've got a fantastic guest for you today coming out of Silicon Valley, Bay Area, Michael Castleman. And he is the author of The Untold Story of Books, a writer's history of book publishing. And I'm really happy to bring him onto the show to talk about his book, his influences, and talk about themes and trends related to it. Michael, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah. I know you're a prolific writer. Just talk about your early experiences briefly, and we'll dive right into the book.
I've been writing books. I signed my first book contract in 1979. That's years ago. And I've written 19 books. And ever since I signed that first book contract, as pretty much as a hobby, I started researching the history and business models of the book business because I was in the book business and I thought it might help me get ahead to understand how this industry works. And it's an industry that has traditionally been shrouded in myth and mystery. Mm-hmm. And so I just, as a hobby, I wasn't thinking about writing a history of book publishing at all. But in the year 2000, which was the demarcation between the end of what I call the second book business, which is industrial publishing, and the beginning of the third book business, which is digital publishing, it became clear pretty early in the 2000s that the changes that were happening in the technology of book production were more than just a new wrinkle in the same old thing, that it was really a whole new business model. And it got me interested, and I ramped up my research and started writing this book. And I wrote it in 4 drafts on and off over 18 years as the third book business was evolving and developing. That's how it happened.
Beautiful. And what it really reminds me of, because I grew up just loving the novels of Michael Crichton and John Grisham, and I just loved how they were doing it in their spare time, just integrating their experiences. And Michael Crichton, he did a lot of traveling and just talking and just integrating into these really beautiful, fascinating stories. And one thing that you talked about is this transition from industrial to the information way of disseminating books. And what is your current thought? Because I used to really love print books, and then I migrated to Kindle. And then when audiobooks and podcasts came out and YouTube, I mostly consume I'll still get the same information from the books, but much faster and much more rapidly. So how is the current digital landscape in terms of the print versus visual and audio?
In the early 2000s, when Kindle was introduced in 2007, and by 2008, Kindle was a worldwide sensation that was selling hand over fist, and many pundits predicted the end of print books. Everything's going to be ebooks. Ebooks was this, ebook that. And for a while, that looked true. From 2007 to 2014, ebooks were taking off like a rocket and seemed unstoppable, and print seemed bereft and like it was on its way out. But in 2014, the unexpected happened, and ebooks topped out and began declining. And since 2014, ebook sales have actually declined by about a third. And now ebooks are still with us, very much with us, but they're comparable to audiobooks But ebooks and audiobooks both gross about $1 billion a year. But the book business is $9 billion a year, and percent of books are still read in print. People like print. And when you ask people in surveys, have asked people, how did you read your last book and why? And a lot of people say that Kindle is great if you're traveling and you want to stuff 10 books into one little device. But a lot of people say that, hey, at school, at work, I'm staring at a screen all the time. When I get home and I want to just have my own free time and curl up with a book, I want to hold a book and read print pages. I don't want to stare at another screen. So that's one reason why ebooks have not put print out of business. And the other reason is that ebooks have become very genre specific. So if you are a reader or writer of romance fiction or mysteries and thrillers, for example, Grisham, Michael Crichton, that group of bestseller mystery thrillers, or romance fiction, which is the number one category of fiction and goes out to women almost entirely. If you're in those two areas, then ebooks sell or represent a huge proportion of those niches. But for everything else, like history, my Untold Story of Books is a history. Only about 5% of history books are read on e-readers. And so between those two things, the genre specificity and people's screen fatigue, print is still very much with us. And it's not that ebooks are in danger. They're here to stay, but they're pretty much on a par with audiobooks now.
Yeah, that's quite insightful, because when I started to notice this shit, like I wrote some books, and then I started with paperback, and I knew that some of the older cohort loved hardback, and then I migrated to Kindle and then when I started to see the readership go down, I created my audio versions, which was really interesting. And I love this idea how you talk about using the physical book as a way to disconnect from technology. It's great to just shut off your phone, shut off your social media, just not answer messages or check your email. I really like that. You have been really successful in the traditional sense of you had a publisher, and, a lot of these days, it's really easy to produce a book now. And, if you have a mass following, you can go on the social media. So talk about how traditional publishing compares to the indie form of publishing books now.
In traditional publishing, books were not scarce, but they weren't super plentiful. In 1980, American publishers released 45,000 books. Now, that's more than anybody could read, and at the time, people were saying, oh my God, 45,000 books, that's insane. With digital publishing, publishers and hybrid publishers and self-publishers release 2 million books a year. 2 million books a year. That's 7,400 a day. That means that during our conversation, another 30 or 40 books will be released in the United States. And those numbers are so staggering, and it has generated the new truth of publishing is that it's easier than ever to publish books and harder than ever to get them noticed and sold. There are just so many. When you're looking at 2 million books a year, every book becomes a blade of grass on a golf course or a snowflake in Antarctica. It's just very hard to get any attention at all. And so when you go on the Authors Guild forum, the Authors Guild is the primary organization of authors in the United States. On the forum, everybody's saying, oh my God, I can't get any notice. How do I promote this thing? And that reflects what we have today, which is an absolute unprecedented glut of books that no one ever really imagined. But it's because the technology of book production went digital. And in 1980, it took a small army of people to have a book printed. Today, one lone individual sitting in a little room can publish an ebook on Kindle in about an hour and distribute it worldwide, essentially for free. And millions of people are doing that. In fact, 2 million a year. That's what we've got, 2 million new books a year. And there's the promise and the peril. The promise of this is that if you have a book in you and you write it one way or another, it can come out and be published. It may not be Simon and Schuster. You may have to self-publish, but it can come out. So that's the good news for authors. The bad news is 80% of books today sell fewer than 100 copies. That's 4 out of 5 books sell in 2 figures because there's so many books out there and there's so much competition. There's never been anything like it.
Yeah, it really reminds me it's like a long tail, like that both ends, like at the super long tail that you have the J.K. Rowling and, the Oprah Winfrey and just very famous. And you have that bell curve. There's a number of wonders that, where you say you're a published author can do for you. It's really interesting. You mentioned that statistic because you don't make money from the books. You make money more from the brand and other opportunities. One follow-up question that I have for you is, do you think that watching a documentary or a movie about the same subject in, say, for example, 1 hour or 2 hours, is more impactful than listening to an audiobook, which would probably take about 4 or 5 hours, versus reading a book? Which, like, when I watch a film or documentary, that's impactful. It's bam, I get the ideas, I can remember it. Whereas it takes me time to read and gotta digest it. What are your thoughts?
I think it's individual. I think some people prefer to read in print. Some people are much more visual learners and love documentaries and video. Some people love audio. There's no shoulds here. People say, oh, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. No. What we have today is a plethora of choices that people can make about how they want to absorb their book-like information. And if you want to hold a hard copy in your hand, you can do that. If you like Kindle on a screen, you can do that. If you like books are booming, people love audio.
I love audio.
And so it's really a matter of personal preference. Myself, I read in print, or occasionally I'll listen to an audiobook. I'm not really that into reading on screen because I'm on a screen all day and I just don't want that. But it's really a personal thing. I have a close friend who only reads on Kindle. She has 100 books loaded up on her Kindle and she just keeps reading them. And so it's really a personal preference.
Yeah. I will always love talking because AI is now the center of conversation. And how do you view AI in this new form of digital media consumption, information, as well as publishing? How are you viewing AI in all of this?
There's no doubt that AI is the next big thing.
Yeah.
But AI is misnamed. It should not be called artificial intelligence. It should be called wholesale plagiarism software. AI is powered by large language models of millions and millions of words. How did they get those words? They stole them. In fact, they stole them from me. 3 of my books were absorbed by the Books 3 dataset, which is used to power AI that is licensed to Meta and Google. So Mark Zuckerberg is picking my pocket for his AI applications. And I don't think that's right. Authors, there are many lawsuits right now where creators of information are suing the thieves who stole it. And it'd be so easy to put in a licensing agreement. If Mark Zuckerberg wants my books, he can have them. He can have them cheap. I'd probably let him go for about $100 a piece if he would just license them instead of stealing them. So what's going to happen is that eventually these suits are going to be adjudicated and the thieves will lose, the creators will prevail, because authors are one of only 2 occupations specifically granted protection in the United States Constitution. Authors and inventors. Authors were given copyrights and inventors were given patents. They took my copyrighted work, they stole it, it's a crime, and I want some relief, and the relief that's available is clear. Just set up an organization to license AI applications, to license and buy creator content. Until then, they're crooks.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's going to be like, how does AI play in, especially with intellectual property and creative licensing, and especially the Hollywood actors strike. And are you able to, is like an avatar, do you have rights to that? The voice, the look, or we're going to have AI avatar celebrities. It's really, like I said, it's almost very akin to the internet in the late 90s and early 2000s. So a lot of questions to be answered. That's why I bring podcast guests and ask them their thoughts on all of these topics. So how can people find you and check out your author page and check out your works and reach out to you?
The easiest way to find my book is to go on Amazon, The Untold Story of Books. It's got a lovely Amazon page. And if people want to know more about me, I am mcastleman.com, mcastleman.com. And you can see all of my work on my own website.
Yeah. And really thanks. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think you have a macro view perspective of everything. And it was great to talk with you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much for having me on, Chris.